Are not here. Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Melissa, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, no biggie. Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me here, ladies. I'm excited to be here. And just to kind of preface what Steph said really quick, I love natural conversation and just flow too. So ask your questions. It never bothers me even if you're interrupting me, please interrupt me because I want to be here to serve you and give you what you need from this call. But let's see, I've been in this industry for 8 years, and wellness, nutrition, fitness, all of that has been a huge part of my life. I actually started off my journey, when I was in this whole space as a smoothie girl at a gym. I don't know if any of you are a part of a gym at all. And, the girls who make the shakes and do all of that. That's where I started my entire journey. And I was actually going to school for nutrition at the same time at University of Delaware. So I have a 4-year degree in nutrition as well. And the whole smoothie girl thing, I had this huge interest while I was in the gym. I watched all the other personal trainers kind of helping their clients, gain results and really work on themselves as individuals. And it really inspired me. I had an amazing mentor at that time too. So he taught me the ropes when it came to, really serving individuals. And from there, I got hooked. I honestly got so hooked into this industry. One, because there was some kind of fire that was really lit up within me to just, help other women kind of gain that strength and gain that confidence within themselves. Because I also found that in the gym for myself. It got to such the point that I stopped, training in other gyms, and I decided to build my own studio. And I actually had my own studio for 2 years. And it was at this time, because I was probably working with women for 3 years at a time at that point, they really started to open up with themselves. Because, as we go throughout life, we're constantly evolving as women, and we're constantly understanding ourselves and, opening up to ourselves. So I was on my own journey at that time, and I started to recognize that we were the same individual, basically. They started to open up to me about their personal struggles when it came to food. At this time, I never expressed to anybody the struggles that I was experiencing with food. And I experienced emotional eating for 10 and a half years. So probably started at the age of about 15 years old for me, and went on for 10 and a half years. But it was at this time that I recognized, when I was with my clients, there's a lot of women who experience this on the daily basis. It's not just me, but I never opened up because I felt very shameful and I blamed myself, and there was just a stigma around all of this. So I never talked about it. And honestly, when I was growing up, it was, Weight Watchers all across the board. Let's talk about diets all of the time. So I never had the opportunity to open up about my personal struggles until I had my own studio, and I really connected with women. And at this time, I was still, my entire career, I did fitness and nutrition with the ladies who I was working with, but I recognized something was missing. There was a big major gap, and they were really blinded by all the fun exercises that we were doing and all the fancy equipment that I had around. It's basically, playing around with toys, when really the big root problem was their nutrition struggles and essentially, their emotional struggles that they were experiencing, which kind of led to their nutritional struggles. So I abruptly closed down my studio, and I said, you know what? This is what I meant to do. I meant to open up about my own personal story and really help women who are currently struggling with food. And that's the short story of it, but that's why I'm here now. And I love what I do. It's absolutely
Amazing.
crazy. Yeah.
I love it. I'm going to start off with a question, kind of conversation opener, because the women in CC want to go in the gym and feel healthy and get stronger and get fit. Yeah. But at the same time, I think a lot of the women, and please, if you're on here, comment, ask questions, struggle with food. They're like, okay, I can go to the gym, I can do the things, but then when I come home, it's like, oh my God, I'm stressed, or oh my God, I want to diet because I'm doing my fitness workouts, and it's this whole mind boggle of things that come around with food, right? Like Sabrina said, working out is easy, but food has always been a struggle. And so what tips or advice, or even a story for you, are you able to now be in your own fitness regimen, or whatever that looks like to you, be active and still be healthy with food? Because I feel like a lot of women struggle with finding this oh, it feels amazing. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like I need to eat or binge eat or emotionally eat. It just feels good. They're struggling to find that. So what advice do you have, or maybe a story that you had for yourself
Yeah.
to find that place of like, I can work out and I can eat in a balanced way without starving or dieting or restricting or binging or whatever the thing is.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in that same position. I did the whole fitness thing for quite some time. And I was in the gym sometimes for an hour and a half thinking that that was my only answer. And I was struggling with food at the same time. And just as if your fitness regimen and has to deal with your behaviors, right? You're picking up a new behavior, you're trying something new. The same thing goes with food, but food is a different beast, if you will, because food has to be a part of our lives. Right? We have to eat in order to survive. Our human body, like that's our fuel. But the reason a lot of us struggle is because, again, it comes from the behaviors. But those behaviors, they start when we were really young. Those behaviors really have started when we were in the home, in our childhood home. And I think I've spoken about this recently on a lot of my Facebook stuff. But just think when you were in your childhood home and you were eating breakfast and lunch and dinner, or maybe not, what did those food behaviors look like? Because that's where a lot of this started. I actually just learned something in a course that I'm taking right now. With our subconscious mind and our conscious mind, there's a barrier that separates the two. And 8 years old and on is when we have the ability to accept or reject certain things. So we can accept behaviors, we can accept certain thought patterns or reject it. But up until the age of 8, we don't have the ability to do that. So everything that we see in our childhood home, we soak up like a sponge and think, that's how I live my life. Right? So basically, since you've been birthed, you have been taught a specific way of eating, right? A specific behavior of eating, if you will. And that has really kind of grown and evolved possibly into something that you're struggling with at this time. Whereas a fitness regimen, I just think it's different. I don't come from a fitness background in my family whatsoever. I'm the most active out of all of them, but I feel like it's definitely a different behavior to really insert into your life. Whereas food, it all started when you were younger, right? We were breastfed, maybe not even breastfed, but when we were babies, we were given food for comfort. That's where it all started, and it's really gained strength.
And so we are given food for comfort, obviously, to survive and to feel good and not hungry and energized and all these things. But then, so what happens to the patterns that start when we take that as in comfort, like food to make me feel happy, food to stop making me feel like I'm not good enough, food to make me feel like I'm sad and depressed, so I'm going to eat? Like, where does that start for some people, and it doesn't start for others? Like people still experience negative emotions or whatever, but don't turn to food or those habits. So why or where does that start for some people?
I'd say a lot still in the household, and it comes in reference to emotions. So that's what, when we're sad, when we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, whatever, if we don't know what the emotion is or honestly how to process it and to express it, because again, we weren't necessarily taught this growing up. So what we did know and what we actually had super easy access to was food. We know food comforts us. So, okay, I feel this feeling right now that I don't really like, and I already know that food is the answer. If I was never taught in my home how to truly process it in a healthy way, then I'm going to go to what I know, which is food right now.
Okay. Right? So us being adults and going through life and then not knowing coping mechanisms, so we turn to food. I'm assuming it's much harder to learn new coping mechanisms as we're in our 20s, 30s, whatever. Yep. How do we deal? What is it? First recognizing what we're feeling and then figuring out maybe new ways that work for each individual to cope? Because I know that's very specific depending on the situation and the person. So I guess it's learning new coping mechanisms to deal with what we're feeling and not having to turn to food for that instant gratification, really.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. There's a lot of moving parts to it because we're breaking down the subconscious blueprint of what we know. We got to break all that down and rebuild that. But it is the starting point to all of this is becoming aware of us, our emotions, our actions, our behaviors, our thought patterns. And then from there, navigating it, right? Because a lot of us do run this life on just, we're so unaware of certain things. We suppress our emotions. We suppress a lot of things, our feelings, because maybe we were told it wasn't safe or we just didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lack of awareness. And that's why we go towards what we know and something that is easy, and just food is always the answer. So to kind of, deprogram that, if you will, we've got to become aware of us, our surroundings, who we are. I start my clients off with just connecting with their five senses again, right? Like, when's the last time that you actually took your fingers and touched your skin, maybe when you were putting lotion on? When's the last time you really listened to somebody in the conversation? When's the last time you actually tasted your food, like all of the flavors? Right? And just using your five senses, connecting with those five senses on a daily basis, your awareness is going to heighten up to here. And you're going to start to recognize, I feel off. I feel this emotion. Something's happening. Oh my gosh, I'm actually seeing myself reach for food. A lot of us don't know we're reaching for food until we're actually like, food is in mouth, and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm here.
Yeah.
Some people have described it like they black out, kind of, like, I didn't even know that I was eating food for my emotion.
And that makes me think of how much we rush things. Like, when we go to eat something, we rush, and then before we know it, it's done. And it's like, I don't even remember tasting it or noticing it or taking my time. And then that leads to like, well, why was I rushing? Maybe because you for many reasons, like, oh, I'm stressed, eat all the food, or maybe just like the go, go, go mentality of the society we live in. But like you said, noticing and paying attention. Samantha says paying attention to the senses and being mindful with what I eat started to help me the most. I used to rush and eat all my food while distracted. And that's, that's very, very common. Most people definitely do that. So number one is like recognizing self-awareness of how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people just go from like, hey, it starts to not feel good, so let's like not even recognize this and let's like jump right away to ignoring it.
Yep.
How do we start to recognize it? Is it simply by slowing down? Like, what do you tell your clients to just start? I know you said the senses kind of thing, but for many women, it's been years of just being in this pattern of let's ignore the things and jump to the other extreme. So how do we recognize what we're feeling, and then what's the next step?
Yeah. So, the awareness has a big part of it, but I also talk about identification with my clients. I have for 4 weeks, I do this with my clients. They're writing everything down. What emotion, like, who triggers me? What triggers me? What is this thing that I want to do as soon as I'm triggered? What's the actual emotion that I'm feeling? What are my actual routines and patterns on a daily basis? When I wake up, what am I doing? I want them to understand, like, so we even go further into this awareness for 4 weeks, just trying to understand what's the root cause of all of this, because this is where our solutions come from, which is why I don't believe in just a one-stop shop. Here's a meal plan, here's a whatever, because it doesn't work for everybody. So I take this awareness thing and I break it down into 4 weeks, and I get them to understand, like, okay, if I'm in a conversation with you about food, what's coming up? What emotion do you feel? When you're around food in the morning time and you're cooking it, what other emotions evoked? When you're going throughout the day, if you notice stress, what just caused that? Right? Mm-hmm. Because these are all they're all the trigger, if you will, before the behavior of emotional eating actually comes. So if we understand your trigger, instead of the behavior being food, that behavior, we do something else. We're switching it, because I call it my behavior model: trigger, behavior, result. We're all triggered and it makes us feel funky, whatever the emotion is. And the result is we just want to overcome it, or we want to be happy, or we want to be excited, right? So we essentially go from nasty to absolutely like amazing. It's that mythical vehicle right there that we're all using food for, that we just need to figure out something else to get us from A to B. Absolutely.
Absolutely. No, I love this. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pull up, some questions that were asked, and these are great discussions.
Yeah.
Excuse me. How can we navigate crazy moments of stress where we see food as an escape? So those moments of like, okay, I'm really freaking stressed, I want to go eat all the things, or I come home from work and it's awful and I want to eat all the food. Like, how do we navigate those moments? I think is the key word, like those moments of stress where you're like, I just want to feel better, and we're like we're talking about, the first thing is like, hey, well, I'll go to food.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do?
Yeah. So this is where like I do all the pre-work with my clients. Like we even break down, I even get them ahead of time, like what does make you this stressful? Because typically there's a pattern in someone's life.
Yeah.
There's a pattern of after work. There's a pattern of after the kids go to bed, something, right? And if we understand the patterns, then all the random moments, we have the ability to intervene. But it's understanding like what are the big moments in our life right now that are creating stress. So I'll use an example because this is really common is everyone comes home from work. I'm super stressed from my work day. And then I'm going to go straight to the kitchen and eat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, cool. Okay. Let's break this down. Like, all right, what time are you getting home? You know, is there a time of day associated with this? Because there is a time association with emotional eating. Is there a specific environment? Are you going straight to your kitchen? Are you going to your living area? Are you actually having a conversation with somebody before you even go to the kitchen? So we want to understand the different components of that moment, because that's where our solutions are going to come up. Maybe you don't go home right away. Maybe you break that pattern and you go to a park or something after work, and then you come home an hour later. So no longer is the time associated, right? Maybe maybe you go for a workout right after, or maybe you have a conversation with a different person,
Mm-hmm.
or, maybe you go home upstairs and change clothes and you don't even go towards your kitchen for 2 hours, right? But typically it's doing something that gives you that, we want to be alleviated from that stress. So it's doing something that brings us that sense of alleviation, but it's serving us, our mind and our body. So it's giving back to us. It's fueling us in a positive way. And that activity is going to be different for everybody.
Yeah. And like, it's really just about breaking the habit.
Yeah.
Like, what can I do instead of like run straight here to the food or emotional eating? Like,
Yep.
Does that mean go and, sometimes like even if I catch myself thinking, oh my God, I need to eat all the food right now or blah, blah, blah. It's like, am I actually hungry? Is my mind is stressed? I can tell when my mind is stressed, and I know I can go do something else to make me feel good or make me less stressed. And then I'm not hungry anymore because it wasn't hunger in the first place. It was just my mind saying, how can I make myself feel better? So breaking those habits, noticing those habits are key. Absolutely. I love that.
It's a pattern interruption. And like I have my ladies, like they do the work on the piece of paper and then they put this piece of paper in a really safe spot. Like if they're inclined to go to the kitchen, I say, put your piece of paper in the kitchen. And then instead of going towards the food, you pick up the paper, you read what you wrote, because your mind's in a frantic spot. Right. And when you're just starting the process, you might have trouble switching it off. So it's pick up the piece of paper and you read what you wrote for yourself, and then you go do that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's such a good way to handle it. I love this question. Lindsay's on here too. She said, it's more so dealing with other people's food issues. I've gotten a super healthy relationship with food, but it's hard when I see others still struggling, or have others poke at how I'm functioning. So I guess it's like, if you've gotten to a good place with food, but you're watching everyone else struggle, it's like, how do you deal with that? What do you say? Do you say anything? Do you try and help them? Like what do you do?
Yeah, it's hard. So I'm an empath. Therefore, when I healed myself, man, I noticed everything, and like I felt somebody's pain. Like I felt them hurting, and it's tough. Like it's tough, especially being a mentor in this space. Like I feel everyone's pain who I'm working with. But we can't go in and say, you need to do X, Y, and Z, because if somebody were to try to come towards us and say that thing, we would get really standoffish. You're attacking me right now. Like, please don't. And so it's more so of just, I always share this with my clients. We have to lead ourselves. We have to be the leader. If this is our best friend and we see our best friend suffering, what we need to do is in that relationship, that dynamic, let's show up for ourselves and show her how we're caring for ourselves. And hopefully we can be that motivation in that sense, and have a, maybe just kind of chat about a little bit with what you're doing, not gloating, not that kind of like perception, but more so of, this is interesting. Let me share this knowledge with you or whatever. But it has to come, if we want to have a conversation with somebody, it has to come from a point that they don't feel attacked. But my biggest recommendation is be the one who leads yourself, because they're going to pick up on your energy and they're going to be the one that asks you the questions. They're going to initiate the conversation. then open up and talk about it. But
Yeah.
it's hard to sit there and just watch somebody.
And everyone is not ready to hear the feedback or the advice, right? Like someone could be so deep into it. So that's why I love that you say, like, we're not here to lecture or teach. It's more of just showing, you know, this is how I'm doing things. This is really good for me. And eventually that person might open up, your friend or whoever, and say, hey, you know, I need some help. I'm struggling. Then is the time to maybe be a little more forward and give advice and stuff like that. So I love that. And this is it's so common, like socialization and eating and all that kind of stuff.
It's huge.
Samantha, it seems like everyone wants to be a professional these days too and tell you what the best diet. Yeah. So I say this all the time, like diets, like people on the internet get so heated about all these different things and then you feel attacked. And this is where I'm just like, stand strong in what you want to do. Like if you like to eat a certain way and it works for you, amazing. But you're not the one commenting or attacking other people's ways of eating. It's so important to just be like confident in what feels good for you right now. And it's okay. I love that.
Yeah.
Sabrina has really long days. So getting home is sometimes the first priority. And then I'm stressed from work, but also hungry. I want something tasty now. How do I recognize that it's something stress and not hunger? So you might be both stressed and hungry. Yeah. And when correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the expert, Melissa, but I feel like if you're stressed and hungry, the stress is going to want you to go towards something like you want the cake or the treats or whatever. And the hunger is going to amplify that.
100%, 100%. So I actually, Sabrina, I have a recommendation is, let's say, it depends, I guess. Here's the thing, because when you're getting home is almost when you feel like the stress is just kind of consuming you, because I get it. You're like decompressing when you get from home. Maybe you have something in your car on the way home that is like a quick snack stick or a piece of fruit or something to kind of curb the hunger. And then that way, when you get home, it's not like pure physical hunger and then emotional hunger, because the emotional hunger will override that physical hunger and you're going to go straight for sugar. So maybe what you can do is, you know, have something that is of control, but in a healthy way on your way home from work in the car. It's one thing, you're eating it, so you're satisfying the physical hunger. And maybe that also ties you over too before you get to dinner. But that's what I would do, is to satisfy the physical hunger, because you can't go on a rampage in your car, right? Unless you're physically aware, like, I'm going to go on a rampage and stop by a store. It's easier for you to stop driving to a certain location. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think this is really common. I'm glad you brought this up, Sabrina. A lot of people, I feel like, what was I going to say? Oh, a lot of people are really freaking busy all day at work. Even if you work from home, you're busy and you might actually just not be prepared or not have the time to eat something that is actually filling. So it's very common, I believe, for you to like sometimes for me, I end a day and my head is just buzzing. So you have that stress there. And then if I hadn't ate as much as I should have that day, it's this combination of like, oh my gosh, I want to eat all the things. So I think recognizing this, and I say this all the time, like, you know, this is happening. So as much as you can prepare for it as possible, so you're not, you know, going home and then just like, let's go crazy and eat all the food, I think is really important. But this happens, I believe, to like majority of women. But I also believe this is going in another direction, that women might think like, I'm not going to eat all day because I'm busy, but then come home and not realize how much hunger they're going to feel and then eat all the foods because they're hungrier than they realize. Or maybe only have something small, but then really enjoy the food and then just keep going and then end up overeating. Do you ever see that happen?
I have. Yeah, I've definitely seen that, because there's a lack of food coming in throughout the day. And so their body is hungry by the time they get home. Sometimes their blood sugar is low. They don't even recognize it. But the moment they start eating, their body's triggered to say, oh, wow, I haven't had food all day, or, oh, my blood sugar is low. I need more food. And it is kind of more of a struggle to kind of stop yourself in that way because you haven't had food all day. It's
Mm-hmm.
happened to me numerous times
Mm-hmm.
throughout my life and many other women that I've worked with. And you got to plan. You really got to, but you got to know everything, right? You got to know what this all looks like so you can plan for that solution first.
Yeah. Trial and error too.
Yes.
Samantha says, I always tend to go out of control with what I eat if I get too hungry and don't have a small emergency snack on hand. I've been known to buy the cheesecake and chips and the bad stuff because, I mean, depending where you are, maybe it's all available, or it does come down to, I believe, like controlling, making good decisions. Like, how do I want to feel? Do I want to feel energized and not feel like crap after eating whatever? You know, it comes down to choices as well. But sometimes we go for those things because we know they're going to make us feel mentally maybe better than a healthier option or a more filling option. So again, it's recognizing these habits, but we recognize them, but the next step is we need to change. We need to change them, and that's how we create new, healthier habits. But all these things, you guys, if things are coming up, please continue to ask questions or comment, because this is all really, really good.
Yeah, even if you guys have – oh, go ahead.
I was just going to read the other question, but it's long, so you go ahead for what you were going to say.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you ladies have like specific scenarios in your mind you're thinking of right now that are like problem areas, I mean, type it in the comments.
And this is a safe place. The only people that are going to see this are in CC, so this is a safe place to ask these questions. Brittany's not on, but she said, I don't know how to word this into a question, but if I'm with a group of friends who take smaller portions than I normally do, then I will always take the equivalent because I don't want to get judged. And then I'm still hungry. And this is what I was talking about, like social situations. So this, I want to touch on this for a second too. I used to notice this in myself. So you go to dinner or whatever, and then you see like Susie got a salad, and then so-and-so got, you know, whatever healthy thing. And you were going thinking like, damn, I want the burger and fries today. And then you're like, well, I guess I'm getting the salad.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate these situations when we feel like, oh my God, are they going to judge me if I get my burger? Or the other way around. If I want the salad today and they're going for the fries and pizza or whatever, you also feel out of place.
Yeah. My biggest thing is why is their opinion mattering to you, right? Because this whole judgment thing that you're thinking that they're going to project onto you, that's your own personal self-judgment of yourself. Why are you judging yourself about having a burger when somebody else is having a salad? Why is that even happening in the first place, right? Or why are you fearful of them judging you for a salad when they're all eating burgers? Why is that coming up in the first place? It's insecurity in our own choices. Also, why are we going to make a decision for somebody else? If we're making a decision to please them, but we're hurting us, how does that add value to our lives? It's not, right? And so it's really understanding that, because everyone loves to put their 2 cents in a social setting. Like, we all know that. And we have to understand that, okay, cool, love your opinion, love you, but I'm just going to stay in my bubble and do me over here because I know this is, you know, the choice that needs to be made for me to serve me. And it's being confident in that decision, right?
Yeah. And even, you know, family gatherings or whatever, there's always going to be the people who are like, oh my God, oh, you're having like the second piece of dessert, or like, oh, you're not having dessert. There's always going to be a comment, whether it's, you know, good or bad. So being confident in your choices is huge. And also knowing like you don't need to give an explanation to anybody for your choices. You really don't. Something that came up for me as well is, like, I know that men do have these issues, but I think of my fiance, Eric, like if he's on a certain like diet plan, you know, he's following it and he doesn't let anyone like change it. He's like, no, this is what I'm eating, because he's confident in what he's doing. And that's exactly what you were saying. It's being confident and owning the way that you want to eat right now. And like you said, it's your own insecurity if you feel like people are judging you. And honestly, no one's going home at night losing sleep over what you ate.
No.
We lose sleep over what we eat, or the choices we make, right? So that's so key, and that's so important. But like, and this is maybe a challenge for some people. Like, if you you go out and then all of a sudden you see your friends getting something, so then you get the same thing. Maybe this is your time to deviate away from that and notice that it's okay. It's not so bad. And you're breaking that habit and also reinforcing, the choices that you make and the confidence that you have in what you want to eat and do. And this goes for everything in life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's something I also want to say to this too is, sometimes individuals will make this comment because of their own insecurity, right? Here you are, you're confident in your decision, and then they sit here and project a comment onto you. Maybe they're looking at you as, motivation, and they're like, wow, she's being really disciplined with herself right now. I wish I could do that. But what their natural human behavior, because they haven't worked on themselves yet, is to say some type of comment to you to kind of bring you down to their level. Some people understand they're doing this. Others don't really understand at times that they're doing this, but they could just be projecting their own feelings about themselves onto you.
And that's so true.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that with like parental things, because they grew up in the time of like low fat or high fat or whatever it was, I don't know, right? And then they think those ways are still the same, and then they're insecure, and I see that a lot.
Yeah.
Sabrina has a good question about meal prepping. I need to do more of this, but sometimes when it comes to eating, it's the last thing I want at that moment. How do you navigate a plan, but still tailoring what feels good at the time?
Yeah. Oh, meal prepping and planning is interesting. So when it comes, this is how I always talk about it with clients is, what's your picture of meal planning and prepping? Because a lot of the times the meals that we're planning and prepping is what we think we should be making, right? And that's a huge component sometimes of when we get to that meal, we're like, I don't really want this, right? Because there's like the national picture of like what meal planning is supposed to look like.
Chicken, broccoli.
And by the time we get to it, we're like, I don't want that. So we have to make our own picture, like what's meal planning for us mean? What does meal prepping for, us look like? And do we cook food for 7 days straight? Am I going to love that meal at 7 days it's been in the fridge? Or is that not me? Do I love fresh food? So I'm only going to make meals for like 2 days, and make a meal that you really want to eat. Not what somebody else is telling you to eat or what you see on Pinterest or whatever it is. Do what you want. That's probably one of the biggest components when it comes to the meal planning and prepping and why people don't want to eat their food. But if you are like, I love fresh food. Like I can't cook food and let it sit in the fridge for 4 days. So sometimes you prep half of that food item, and sometimes you cook it on the spot, or maybe you cook it the night before, and then you're more inclined to eat it because you're like, oh, I just had this last night. So it's kind of, I think Sabrina is understanding like, what's your current picture of meal planning and prepping in your mind? Are you doing this based off of someone else's definition, or are you creating based on your own definition? Define it for you first. And then I think you'll love what you're cooking and want to eat your meals, honestly, when it comes to it.
I love that, because I think anyone who thinks meal prep thinks it has to look like the specific way that we see it on wherever we see it. And then we don't even like it, but we do it because it's called meal prep. But you can do however, like you said, it doesn't have to be a week straight. It could be 3 days straight. It could be, whatever you want it to be. And I really love that. Something too, I think I work from home. I don't have to prep my stuff, but I think a lot of people think, oh, if I, make this salad or make this thing or whatever, I'll be super healthy, but knowing it's not really going to satisfy you. And then you eat it, and then you feel like you end up like feeling worse after. Right. Yeah. So that's something too, is notice, okay, if you keep making this thing over and over again and you hate it, or it's not satisfying you, like you're allowed to change it or make it different or add or whatever it is. So like, I don't follow a lot of the food trends anymore, so I don't even know what's out there. But I just know like we really need to just start listening to ourselves. Like, what do we want? Okay, I tried this today or this week and I didn't like it. Okay, you can change. It doesn't have to be the same, what someone else, another coworker is eating. It doesn't have to be what yours looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
What about the one picture that's been going around with meal prep of money divided for different places to eat at? Oh my God, I've never saw that.
What is that?
I have no idea. It's I guess a picture going around. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, Samantha. Money divided for different places to eat. Like eating out, like dining out?
I don't know. I don't
I have no idea.
know. Okay, guys, are there any other questions right now coming up?
It's a joke.
Oh, it's a
We're both
joke.
like,
Okay, I was
what?
like, what? I'm confused. I know there's another question that was asked. I just need to go find it in the group. And I believe it by Jess, and she's not on. If I can find it.
The picture showing money. Oh no. Oh. As much as you can, try to make your own food. Oh.
Okay, how do I stop food from being a coping skill to manage my negative emotions? Always overeat junk. Okay, so we kind of covered that anyways.
Yeah.
Emotions and eating. How do I stop food from being a coping skill?
Yeah. You know what? I do want to touch on that. I didn't say yet. When I go through this activity with ladies of like, what are other things that you like to do that make you happy? What are other things that bring you excitement? Because ladies are so in the adult world of just stress, they're like, I don't know what that even is. Like, I don't even know what fun is. I don't even know what does make me happy, which that can cause a mental block for you. And then you're like, oh my God. So my biggest recommendation is try to remember way back in the day, or like maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when you didn't have all this stress in your life, this adult stress. What did you do then for fun? What did you do then that brought you excitement? Start there.
I love that.
Yeah, I've noticed that's a big block.
Yeah. But battling negative emotions with cooking.
Ooh, so give me a better give me a more detailed question there, Sabrina. So what is happening when you're cooking? Like you just despise it, you hate it. What's going on?
And you're allowed to not like cooking. I hate cooking. Most people, like, you don't have to like put on your apron and just love it. Like, there's ways to make food good, and it doesn't have to be overcomplicated if you don't like cooking, if that's what you're talking to. But in general, I think a lot of people think they have to love cooking. Like, you don't have to. I do not love cooking, right? But yeah, maybe
it's a lot of what this is like what's society's pictures and definitions for us of food and cooking and meal prepping and all of this. And that's what we're all trying to live up to, is society's definition, the pictures that have been ingrained in our mind over these years. So break this stuff down. Like, what do you want this to be for you? What's your own definition? I get stressed if too much is going on or have too many pots on the stove. Then if I don't like it and I spend all that time, I feel worse. Yep. That makes sense. So make cooking easy for you, right? I have a cookbook of over 100 recipes with 5 ingredients or less in each and every meal. Like, I know and that's another thing. I think like cooking shows, you've got to have 20 ingredients for this food to be absolutely amazing. And that's just not the case. Make this simple. We all love complexity way too much, but we have to just make this simpler. So maybe Samantha, maybe you are trying to cook too many meals at once. That could be a possibility. And then also as well, maybe you're trying to add too many ingredients at once. So make this much simpler for yourself, and find recipes with minimal ingredients, and maybe just to cook a few things at once. If you love music, turn the music on. Samantha was saying, turn the music on and dance and just have fun in the kitchen. Like, how can you make cooking fun?
And if you're really busy, and I know Sabrina's very busy, and all of us are really busy, we don't want to spend that extra hour cooking these extravagant things. So, but there's so many ways to make things like delicious, whatever, like stir fries or whatever, Instant Pot. Yes, game changer, right? That it doesn't have to take forever. It doesn't have to take an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours of your evening or your day or whatever. So it doesn't have to be overwhelming. We can get rid of that added stress that doesn't need to be in your life. I love that, because that's something that people deal with on a daily basis, 100%.
Yeah. Or outsource, like.
Yes.
Like, there's so many meal prep companies out there. I'm actually going to start doing this, because I started to recognize like that I just didn't want to get in the kitchen because I have all these other things I want to do. And like, you know what? I'm just going to go to a meal prep company. You make my food. You're going to make my life easier.
I'm speaking this into existence right now. Eric and I one day are going to have our own chef. This is no, but seriously, between his life and mine, we're like so busy. We're like, oh my God, it'd be amazing to have a chef. Right? Like, but really, my dream, Sabrina says, yes. No, this is so good, right? But I think the biggest thing and the biggest struggle, I think, for many women who might not be on here live, but will watch the replay, is just how to overcome those habits of turning to food when you're feeling sad or lonely. Lonely is a big one. At nighttime, you're lonely, and where do you go? You turn to food because it feels good, right? So the biggest thing I think for most women is battling with negative emotions and using food, and then all of a sudden you've gained weight, and then you've got health problems, and then you're in like this bigger funk because of all these reasons. And again, whether it's overeating or binging or whatever, or restricting, it's the same thing. It's just a different behavior, is to really notice first, like, how are you feeling? Why are you feeling this? How can you deal with this in a more constructive way, instead of making it worse, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the gist of it. Like, that's the general approach here is when you feel lonely, what can you do to make you feel comforted or like you're not lonely? When
or
you're
even
stressed,
bored.
what can you, yeah, bored's a big one. Bored is emotional eating. We all do it in front of the TV all the time. It's an emotion. It might not be an intense emotion, but it's still an emotion, and it's still considered emotional eating to some degree, you know? So it's just figuring out, when I feel this emotion, where does it come from? What can I do that is something other than eating that's actually going to serve me? And share with yourself that you deserve more. You deserve more. You deserve to do something different for yourself.
And I think another key thing for all of this is to just slow down. Like, slow down. We can think about how we feel. We can think about our choices. And if you slow down and rationalize, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be turning to food and overeating. It's going to be like, oh, okay, I'm fine. I'm not hungry. You forget about it. You forget about the idea of thinking when something else, or of eating when something else comes to mind, right? So slowing down, and we're not in a rush. Like, food's not going anywhere. It's there. You can get it when you're hungry. Like, really just tuning into your emotions is number one. And then just following what feels good to eat.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Any final words for anyone on here? And then if people are watching the replay, I think maybe people can comment, and if they have more questions, maybe I can refer you into the group, or somehow we'll figure it out. But I know Melissa has great programs and ways. If you really feel like you need to dive deeper into this, reach out to her, and she'll recognize your name from being in here or whatever. But definitely, like, if you feel like this is hindering your life, or you know someone, look up Melissa's Facebook, and whatever, you can tell what your things are.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, honestly, if you feel that this is something that you are struggling with, first and foremost, I don't want you to be scared or shameful at all, because many women that you probably know are also experiencing this too. I know Steph's always talking about being courageous and, you know, really stepping up your confidence, and this is a big way to do that for yourself, because food is going to be there throughout the rest of your life. And so it's just learning to work with food versus against it. So right now I have a free support community that you can come into and learn even more if you desire. It's Emotional Eating Solutions and Support on Facebook. Samantha's going to come stalk me. Amazing. If you're ready to actually dive in through this entire process, and you want to work through whatever these wounds are right now that are causing this emotional eating, my 16-week program called OEE, which is Overcoming Emotional Eating. Right now I have a container for mothers, specifically mothers, open, because I know the dialogue and conversations are going to be way different for mothers. And then in the next couple of weeks, my other container, which mothers and non-mothers, will be opening back up. So it's a group style coaching program, but you can also work with me one-to-one. You can always just privately message me about that, and we can go ahead and chit chat about all the details. But those are probably the biggest ways I'd recommend right now to come hang out with me, find me, learn more about this. And yeah.
Amazing. Well, I love this conversation. The way the mind works, mindset and food and nutrition, it's a huge thing. And we talked about this before. It needs to be talked about more, because it really is a problem that a lot of women deal with. So if there's no other questions on live, like, thank you guys for being here. And thank you, Mel, for being on here and taking your time on the Sunday evening to share your wisdom with everyone. And again, if people are watching and have questions, I'll make sure to direct them to you if needed. But this was really, really great. I love this conversation. This is so helpful. So
Yeah, thank you.
everyone, guys, thank you for being on here. And thank you so much, Mel. And I will see you guys in the group and I'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Awesome.
All right.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, ladies. Happy
Bye,
Sunday.
guys.